Hello friends, welcome back. This week we have started this course wastewater treatment and recycling, and earlier in the previous 3 lectures we discussed basic about the course, and then what are the different sources and types of wastewater. So, we were discussing the various point and non-point sources of wastewater earlier. Now, we will talk about the concept of treatment and recycling. What is the basic need of treatment, basic need of we briefly talked about it earlier in the very first lecture, but we are going to see some more prospective details of why we need treatment, okay, and what is the significance and importance of recycling in the sense of wastewater management in this particular lecture. To begin with, first thing comes that why we need wastewater management. Okay. We have been using water since ages. We have been sort of letting that flow, the used water or wastewater or sewage, whatever we call it. So, we were letting the sewage flow in our natural systems, either rivers, soils, anywhere, and we have not been bothering earlier like since few centuries back. But with the progress of the time, with the more and more population increased, and the development taking place in the form of a lot more urbanization, where there is a huge population lives in a relatively smaller area, thereafter industrialization. So, all these things has sort of in a way concentrated the load in much more qualitatively as well as quantitatively concentrated form. So, then the bulk of pollution getting released at one particular point, one particular location or one particular state has started creating several problems, multifold problems. The discharge of untreated or partially treated sewage typically results in environmental pollution, and everybody agrees it, everybody accept that. Okay. It may have severe consequences that can be classified into 3 major categories. So, one is the adverse human health effect, okay. So, which is primarily associated with the reduced water quality. Wherever we discharge that water, the wastewater, it actually the wastewater itself is of poor quality, and then whenever it meets a natural water system, it basically pollutes that as well. So, large portion of water gets polluted, and that results in the sort of, particularly because human rely, let us say we are letting a city's sewage, untreated sewage flow in a river. So, river water quality is also polluting. Now, many habitat, many small villages, many small towns, a significant degree of population may actually be surviving on that river, means that river is sort of fulfilling their water demands. So, if the people are consuming that water, and for say take an example of river Ganga. So, river Ganga, the Kanpur city sewage, treated sewage, although it is treated, but let us say for say assume it is a not treated with the required quality, okay, or it is a poorly treated water or partially treated water. If it meets to the river Ganga, the overall water quality in Ganga is likely to deteriorate. Now, by the time Ganga reaches, means thereafter Ganga passes through various small villages, few towns, Fatehpur, and then eventually connects with Yamuna in the Allahabad. So, you may have, for a size of city of Allahabad, you may again plan to pull water and then put a treatment and for supply, but what about those many small villages and towns across that? So, for them they might be relying directly on Ganga water, which is contaminated with the sewage that has met in the Kanpur for say. So, in that case, when the people are using such water, okay, which is amended with the wastewater also, the quality has deteriorated. So, then they basically invite a lot of health risks. Okay. There is severe consequences could happen in terms of health effects. Okay. So, that is one aspect. Then there is negative environmental effects due to sort of degradation of water bodies and ecosystem. So, when such water meets and pollutes natural system, obviously there will be environmental effects of that, and there could be potential economic effects as well. Okay. So, these are the three broad categories. There could be human health impacts, environmental effects, as well as economic effects. So, these are the three broad categories in which these effects can be categorized. Now, if you see this diagram over here, you get a contaminant. Now, it how typically happens that many different municipalities or different governing agencies, governing bodies do different type of governance. You talk a small village where nothing is there, people directly use water and that contaminated water directly gets discharged. Okay. Then at some places it might be basically getting collected or channelized to a collective system, and thereafter it is emptied. In some cases it might actually receive some degree of transport, some degree of collection, and even some degree of treatment also at times. But if that is not adequate and in whatsoever stage it is getting discharged, until unless it is completely treated and it is properly reused or disposed of, whatsoever stage we are discontinuing it, the level of risk could be different, but there is a risk associated with it. Okay. These are probably the most dangerous or most risky options. Here you have achieved some partial degree of treatment. So, the red line that you see here has much less threat as compared to this red line, but this one also is not totally safe. So, there is some degree of risk involved in this as well if it is a unsafe discharge, because it has not been adequately or it has not been properly treated. So, those kind of issues comes in there. Now, so as we were discussing the three broad categories or three broad groups of the adverse impact. So, if we see first human health impact. So, in human health impact, the sanitation or wastewater related diseases, they sort of remain widespread in the region where there is a poor wastewater management practices are adopted. So, if the wastewater management practices are not good, if there is no proper sewer line, if the waste is not channelized in a proper fashion to a treatment facility, then there is always a chance of human exposure to that wastewater, and such exposure imposes a great degree of risk for the human health. Okay. If we see the WHO report, World Health Organization report, so they in their report claimed in 2012 claimed that around 8.5 lakh of deaths in middle and low income countries have been caused due to the contaminated drinking water in that particular year. Okay. So, it is either due to contaminated drinking water or inadequate cleaning and sanitation services. So, this includes, let us say, not proper hand washing facility, not proper toilet facility, not proper sewer connections. So, whatsoever, if the these cleaning and sanitation services are inadequate and the drinking water sources are not good enough, that attracts a great degree of health risk. The idea is that improving sanitation and wastewater treatment is normally accepted as a key intervention strategy. So, people believe that if we sort of provide a proper sanitation and wastewater treatment facility, we can eliminate so many waterborne diseases or so many water based diseases. This could include cholera, dengue, diarrhea, there are many more actually. Okay. A study conducted has shown that how the let us say risk of diarrheal diseases or risk of diarrhea reduces with the proper sanitation facility. So, you see that this is unimproved sanitation facility, the risk is quite high. Now, you do the improvement around 16% improvement, the risk further reduces, 28% risk further reduces, by around 70% reduction. The community sanitation or sewer connection, if we connect, the risk is very low for such diseases. So, that is how the like human health aspect can be considered one of the triggering factor or one of the important factor which sort of emphasizes that there is a severe need for wastewater management or good wastewater management practices. There are environmental effects as we were discussing earlier. So, if we are discharging say polluted water in the receiving body, the body which receives polluted water will in turn get polluted, and then your entire resource, water resource which is available for direct use, we are not, when we are considering the environmental effect or the natural effect on the nature, we are not just bothered about the human consumption, but all other, we have so many other ecosystems, aquatic ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystems also depends on large degree of surface water bodies. So, all those ecosystems, you are having contaminated water in a river. So, your fishes are likely to get contaminated, your animals surviving on that river for drinking purposes and all that are likely to get exposed to the such water. So, it poses a risk of a great degree for the environmental damage as well. Okay. So, the water which is available for direct use, if that gets contaminated, then we are of course exposing our ecosystem to a contaminated water. Lately water pollution has been increasing in most of the rivers in India. Okay. We have seen the state of Ganga, Yamuna, all major rivers how polluted they are, and it is not only in India, it is there in several other countries also. So, other countries from Africa, Asia, Latin America, only if you like discount for some developed countries, the status is not very like good in many other countries or most of the most part of the world. Okay. So, the issues are similar, the problems are very much similar. So, these pollution of rivers are mainly attributed towards the release of sewage and industrial effluent with no or inadequate treatment. So, that is one of the major reasons why these our natural body natural rivers have been considered have been sort of slowly and steadily getting polluted. Okay. There is a interesting case study of Thames river in the Britain, in the England. So, how at one point of time it was basically completely lost its pristine stage. It was like a very dirty drain kind of thing, and they slowly and steadily then started managing their sewage. They built quite a few sewage treatment plants and industrial waste effluent treatment plants, then channelized the treated water into that, which started improving condition. Later on with further urbanization, the condition once again started deteriorating in the around 70s or 60s, and then they further tried to revamp that. So, they moved these treatment plants or these things out of the city. So, quite a few of efforts has been made in order to restore that river. So, those kind of examples are there even in the developed world as well. So, environmental pollution due to inadequate wastewater treatment has also direct impact on ecosystem and the services it provide. Okay. For say we can take an example of a lake which is receiving some effluent or some wastewater which is rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, So, that will obviously lead their algal bloom or eutrophication, and which is kind of potentially toxic for the biodiversity of that particular lake. So, this kind of environmental effects are very prominent and are often seen. There are economic effects as well. So, economic effects are mostly indirect effect though. Okay. Human health effects, if we are relying on contaminated water, one can see directly. Even the environmental effects, most of the environmental effects can be seen directly, some are indirect effect as well, but there are a lot of indirect economic effects as well. Consider that you for say you are adding untreated or inadequately treated water to a river, the water is getting polluted, then in downstream some city is relying for their drinking water facility on that river. So, if they are withdrawing that water, so they have to provide a certain degree of treatment in order to get that water usable. If rivers are in pristine stage, a very little or nominal treatment could do, but if you are contaminating the river with say severe pollutants or industrial pollutants or some other kind of things which are unacceptable for potable uses of the water. So, then the downstream city or downstream municipality have to arrange for that degree of treatment, which may incur huge cost. Okay. So, this becomes a burden because of somebody is polluting water in the river in upstream, the downstream regions or downstream areas suffer. So, we all understand that fresh water availability is very critical for economic welfare and growth. Okay. And if we are getting poor water quality, it constitutes additional obstacles for the economic development. So, there would you cannot use let us say dirty water or polluted water for many industrial process, you cannot not use for municipal supplies. So, you will have to provide treatment, you will have to incur sort of you have to make certain expenses in order to make that water fit for the purpose, whatsoever purpose it is being used. So, there comes cost associated with that. Okay. Further, the poor water quality can directly affect economic activities that use water. It can sort of affect agriculture. We can see a loss of agricultural productivity. Okay. If we are irrigating a field with not so good quality of water, or there is some contaminant in water which you try to irrigate a field with saline water, it will quickly get unfertile. Okay. So, those kind of losses are there. We can get to see a loss of agricultural productivity, we can see economic effects or bad effects on industrial production, fisheries, aquaculture, navigation, tourism. So, these are the activities, some of the activities which directly use water, and their sort of economic status or this thing is going to be changed if the quality of water that is being used is not adequate, is not pure. Okay. We have seen news coming in that our food grains or vegetables are polluted with this particular contaminant, that contaminant, sometimes pesticide, sometimes these things. So, how it is coming? Because we are irrigating properly, we are irrigating with not so good quality of water, or we are cropping in a soil which is already contaminated. So, in such cases, if we if such cases arises, that will obviously lead adverse effect onto the productivity, onto the acceptability of those goods. Okay. Many times you see if if there are issues with the quality of any of these food grains or food materials, many or for say other materials, other products also. Okay. Many countries will put a ban, that a ban on the sort of import of these goods. Okay. So, you are doing a fishery fish culture on a much larger scale and then irrigating with certain water which is not of good quality, putting for fish culture, using some water which is not of that good quality. So, and your fish is uptaking some contaminant in it, you probably will not be able to export that fish to the western countries or to the developed world, because they have their own quality control, and if they figure out that okay, it is being grown on such contaminated water, so they may actually refuse to take. So that could incur a huge economic loss. Okay. For tourism purpose, we have lot of our water bodies attract lot of tourists, but if the quality of water deteriorates, probably that will that business is completely going to die down. Then there are many other such activities. So, with improper management of wastewater, there would be external cost, okay, because if we are not properly managing this wastewater, there are likely to be externalities or external cost, okay, which will be sort of generated. For say, I was giving an example of the treatment of water for domestic supply. So, if upstream water is contaminated, downstream has to incur more cost for the treatment purpose. Okay. Similarly, in like you want to promote tourism, if your inflow water quality is not good, you will have to treat and then let it flow in the pond, channel, whatsoever you are making. So, there are going to be economic externalities in the form of external cost, okay, which will be generated. At the same time, the potential benefits of using wastewater or reusing wastewater are lost. So, because we are letting our water flow, our wastewater flow in some body, so we are not utilizing or we are not using that a resource, because even if it is a wastewater, as we discussed in the earlier lecture, that even if it is a wastewater, it is a form of water, only there are certain contaminants in it, and that if those contaminants are removed, it can still be used as a resource. So, we are letting that resource also flow. So, we are not using that resource for beneficial purpose. So, we are losing some sort of potential benefit out of letting that water flow. That is also an economic damage. So, at one place we are incurring more cost for purification and these kind of thing, and at one place we are letting a resource flow, we are not using it for a sort of targeted or good purpose. So, this kind of issues sort of generate a lot of economic effects. So, the economic argument for improved wastewater management are fairly simple. Okay. It can simply be made that we need to minimize the negative impact it can cause and maximize the benefit it can generate. Okay. If we are started using, if we are started reusing wastewater, okay, so we are getting a resource, there is some additional value of that, of course we will have to incur treatment cost and all that, but that anyway is coming through other means, through externalities and all that. If we are leaving the pollutants to the environment, we are facing environmental cost, indirect your financial cost, economic cost, then risking human health thing. So, there are lot many things, lot many risks, okay, which is leading to economic effect. Okay. A village is, let us say, fed with poor quality of water, okay, people will often fall sick, okay, as we discussed in the health effects. So, if they are often falling sick, they will have to bear their medical expenses, right. So, that is also there is an economic burden associated with health risk also, there is an economic burden associated with the environmental effects also. So, all things eventually like are connected. Okay. Your bad environment will lead to bad health, will lead to more cost of the treatment or medical facilities. Okay. So, all these things are connected, and overall holistically if we see, so this appears as a fair proposition that the wastewater should be treated, should be reused as a resource, and so that its adverse effect on the human health, adverse effect on the environment, and adverse economic effects could be saved. So, these are some of the examples of impact whatsoever we have been discussing. Okay. So, impacts on health, if we see, there is increased burden of diseases, there is impact on environment in the form of decreased biodiversity, degraded aquatic ecosystem, so fall orders and all that coming in. And if you see, there is a long list, and there are quite a few points mentioned in the impact on economy as well. Okay. So, reduced industrial productivity, agricultural productivity, fish and shellfish catches, financial burden on healthcare, increased barrier on international trades, as we were discussing that the export and these kind of things can also be affected. Okay. The higher cost of water treatment, the point that we were discussing. So, more or less points that we have discussed, some of them are listed over here. Okay. Now, so the idea is, by now we realize that wastewater management with an idea or with an intention of recycling is good in a way that it gives multifold benefits. Okay. And the risk associated in terms of human health or in terms of environment or financial losses are huge. So, that is why one should think about the reuse and recycling of wastewater as a fair proposition. Now, for the purpose of recycling wastewater, okay, we say that it is like, now people believe that it is the most sustainable approach for wastewater management. However, if we want to recycle wastewater, we need the quality of water to be fit for the designated use or for the purpose for which we are using the water. If we are recycling water, we are obviously going to use that water. Now, for using that water, the quality of water has to be fit for the particular use. Now, how the quality of water would be fit? We are talking about a wastewater thing. So, the quality of wastewater is often, everyone know that quality of wastewater is quite poor. Okay. And the quality of water which is used for certain purpose, even if it is agriculture or irrigation or household activities or industrial activities, are generally they are cleaner water, and we are talking about wastewater using for those purposes. So, what is essential, that this quality of wastewater needs to be improved, and how it can be improved? It can be improved through these suitable treatment processes. So, we must employ suitable treatment process to the water or to the wastewater before we get it recycled. Before the water is recycled, it should be properly treated with the suitable treatment process, so that the quality of water or quality of treated water which is produced is fit for the designated use. So, therefore, this wastewater treatment becomes the most critical step in wastewater management. Why it is most critical? Because we are talking about wastewater management, and we see that the prime thing or the best option that appeared of the wastewater management, we have different option of a wastewater management. We can let it discharge to the river, or we can use it for certain designated purpose, and we see that reuse or recycling is probably the best approach for wastewater management. And for recycling or reuse purpose, we have to ensure that the quality of water or the quality of treated wastewater is good enough for the recycling application, and that can only be ensured with the good and adequate degree of treatment. So, that is why this treatment process becomes the most critical step, because this is what it can actually produce the quality of water which can be reused, or even for safe disposal also. Okay. Because this ensures that the water is suitable for either reuse purpose or even disposal. Even if you want to, let us say, dispose, for disposal also, we should not dispose the contaminated or untreated or partially treated sewage. Okay. So, this depends on the ability of what are the various treatment steps that reduce the contaminant load to the desired level, or what we typically call the prescribed standard, because there are standards for disposal, there are standards for reuse. So, if you want to reuse or recycle a water, it should meet the prescribed standards, means the quality of water should meet the prescribed standard. And how you can ensure that that quality of water can be produced out of a wastewater? It can only be produced by providing suitable adequate treatment steps. Okay. And that is why the wastewater treatment is very crucial and very important aspect of the wastewater management. Okay. Overall, you will see several steps in the wastewater management. Wastewater is collected, channelized, brought to a treatment plant, it is treated, then either disposed or recycled. So, all those things are there, but the treatment is essentially the one of the most critical or the most critical step. So, if we see the effective wastewater management cycle, okay, there are various variety of options. The prevention or reduction of the pollutant at the source is the first step, okay, or the first process. If we can prevent the wastewater from getting generated or reduce the pollution at the source itself, this reduction means in terms of pollution load as well as volume of the wastewater produced. So, if let us say we are producing 100 units of wastewater, if we can reduce that quantity to 20 unit or 30 unit, we are saving a lot of water or lot of polluted water from being produced. Okay. Similarly, if we can reduce the contaminant load, then thereafter the removal of contaminant from the wastewater streams, which is actually the treatment step. Then the use of wastewater, so water reuse or water recycling becomes the next step, and there is a recovery of useful byproduct. Okay. So, from sludge and from water, if we can recover certain useful byproducts, so that is also very important, okay, and that should be in an effective wastewater management cycle, right. So, how we can basically convert from waste to resource wastewater. So, around 80% is pure water, which can be treated and used for variety of purposes. Okay. This sludge can be used for biogas production or biosolids production. Okay. So, there is basically reduction in the pollution or solid pollution, and through anaerobic digester we can produce energy out of it. We will discuss these things in detail once we move further in the course. Okay. And we can of course recover certain materials like phosphorus, and this kind of thing also can be recovered out of wastewater. So, that way we can go for the recovery of useful byproducts, we can go for the reusable quality treated effluent production through treatment, and of course, if we can prevent, so that is the one of the ideal cases. So, if we see the recycling perspective of wastewater management, okay, majority of things we have already discussed. So, resources in the excreta and wastewater are, what are the resources? There is water, there is nutrient, there is some energy content in the form of organic matters, and there are other things. The resource management option is water reuse and recycling, combined water and nutrient reuse. So, if we are let us say going for agricultural irrigation and all that, we can use nutrients also together. We anyway sort of apply fertilizers for that purpose. Then nutrient reuse or combined organic matter and nutrient reuse we can use for energy generation, ecosystem services, and get in some other outputs. The technical system options are there, whether we should go for centralized or decentralized, waterborne or non-waterborne excreta management. Then whether we should go for separate grey water management, we discussed what is grey water. So, the one which is coming from kitchen and laundry and washing. What about sludge management, off-site or on-site treatment, where we should provide what degree of treatment, what kind of treatment is to be given. And if we see the benefits, there are health protection, environmental protection, there are water security, food security, some energy things, climate mitigation and adaptation, all these sort of potential benefits can be obtained, okay, if the wastewater managed nicely, considering the recycling and reuse of material, energy, water, everything. So, we conclude this lecture here, and in the last lecture of this week we will talk about the what are the major issues and challenges, particularly in the wastewater management sector. Thank you.